Part 2, Chapter 9, Practicing the Presence of God. And as they thus spake, Jesus himself stood in the midst of them, and saith unto them, Peace be unto you. We know that God is both the highest God and the innermost God, and our minds are a part of his mind. Thinking, therefore, is a twofold process. We not only think with our own minds, but we also think in his mind. For most of us, to think of him as present in our own minds is the easiest way to conceive of the presence and affords us the quickest way to contact him. But the presence is wherever we conceive him to be. If we conceive him to be in the reserved sacrament of the altar, he is there. If we think of him as being present in illness or danger or disaster, he is there. If we conceive him as with us in moments of triumph, elation, and happiness, he is there too. Because God is omnipresent, we know him to be everywhere equally present. Being in our minds, he goes with us wherever we go and is instantly responsive to our every call. If we are lonely, he is at hand to comfort us. If we are in need, he is there to fulfill us. If we are sick, he is near to minister unto us. If we seek guidance, he gives it. Yes, the Christ is wherever we are at any and every moment, unseen by most of us, but just as present as when he walked the dusty roads of Capernaum and Galilee with Jesus. Perhaps the greatest exponent of practicing the presence was Brother Lawrence of the Middle Ages. Like the mystics of all ages, he was a man of great faith and insight. Walking with God, he found him even among the pots and pans of the kitchen, where he worked as a cook. His method was wholehearted acceptance of the Christ as always and everywhere equally present. No matter what the circumstance or conditions were, the living presence was always there, meeting his smallest or his greatest need. To many persons this will sound like a beautiful, visionary, and fantastic theory, but those who practice his techniques, it becomes an astonishing, practical, and vivid reality. Men and women in all walks of life, as well as great mystics such as Boehm, Eckhart, and Brother Lawrence, have found it to be fact and not theory. There is standing beside, within, before, and behind each one of us an invisible presence. The New Testament calls this presence Christ. The Old Testament calls it Emmanuel, a word meaning God with us. It was to this presence that Jesus referred when he said, Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Regardless of what we call the presence, it is that light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. When the light departs, the physical body begins to fall apart. Did you find this hard to believe? Well, then ask yourself these questions. Do eyes see? Do ears hear? Do brains think? Does the heart love? The answer is no. If eyes could see, ears hear, and brains think, they would go on seeing, hearing, and thinking forever. Robert Browning referred to this presence as the imprisoned splendor, a splendor imprisoned in the sense that we fail to realize and to release him. The Christ is not something apart and different from ourselves. He is the real self. Jesus so unified his psychological nature and his spiritual nature that God spoke and acted through him. He said, I do nothing of myself. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the work. Look you where you will in the New Testament, you will find the golden truth running through every book that all men share the divine Spirit. When the people choose to worship in personality of Christ instead of God, he saith, It is expedient that I go away. For if I go not away, the Comforter will not come unto you. That is, you are mistaking a person for a principle, but the Spirit will awake the truth in you that I have been talking about. The most that any teacher can do for us is to show us the divine possibilities that are latent in our souls. The uncovering and embodiment of those possibilities is up to us. To practice the presence, we must not only provide a psychological channel for the divine guest to act through, but we must seek to put on, to personify, the Christ as Jesus did. To him, this presence was very real. He talked to it as he would talk with another person. Do we talk with God? Yes, we do, since we are all individualizations of the one life. There is no one else to talk to. We draw upon the divine presence in such a degree as we become aware of it. This practice is not something mystical, complicated, and difficult. It is really very simple and easy. It assumes that within each man is an invisible presence, that this presence is God individualized in man, that there is no barrier between man and him but belief, and that as much of this reality as releases through his awareness his spiritual power. One of the truly spiritual members of my congregation said to me recently, I have moments when I practice the presence, but my greatest problem is to be conscious of the presence of God at all times. That is a common difficulty among truth students. Many make the unfortunate mistake of trying to force God to be present by using willpower. But God is spirit, and spirit is not under the dominion of the human will. Jesus made this clear when he said, Not my will, but thine be done. Until we bring the human will into subjection to the divine will, we shall never rise any higher than the physical world of sense. We need to realize that God is already present, and that there is no place in the universe from which he is ever absent. If you, like my friend, are ever troubled by a sense of God's absence, silence your doubts and cling to your intuitive knowledge. Remind yourself that you are a focus of that life, love, and intelligence, which is God, and you cannot be separated from your source. Know that your only reason for existing is to express your Creator, and that nothing can break the unity between the Creator and the created. He cannot and does not change. The change, the realization that you seek, must take place in you. He will always be wherever you conceive him to be. God can be seen only with the inner eye. The man who follows God with his senses only sees nothing and hears nothing. He forgets that God is spirit, and that they who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. The voice does speak, the light does shine, the mystic touch does come, not through the senses but through the spiritual faculties. They come when we accept the presence and not before. The first thing the blind Bartimaeus did when Jesus sent for him was to cast away his garments, so that nothing would stand in the way of his response. To Jesus' question, "What wilt thou that I should do unto thee?" the blind man answered, "Lord, that I might receive my sight." Not many of us realize the importance of being ready to receive the good things that God hath prepared for them that love him. If we are not receptive to the good God has prepared for us, it avails us nothing. We must get personality out of the way of the divine circuit for the particular good we seek to get through. The presence of God is always with us in the same way that the principle of mathematics is always with us. We put the principle of mathematics to work through recognition and acceptance. So it is with principle. God becomes active in us through our recognition and our embodiment of the presence. His life, power, and substance are ever ready to flow through us, our loved ones, and our affairs when we have unified our psychological natures and our spiritual natures to such a degree that the Christ is personified in us. Jesus himself said, "Lo, I am with you also, even unto the end of the world." Then how can he be absent anywhere except in our belief? Jesus said, "Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me." When we put God first in all things, the difficulties in our lives begin to straighten out, our affairs fall into divine order, wholeness is established in our being. Like the blind man who immediately received his sight, we too immediately receive the fulfillment of our desire. Demonstration follows the acceptance of truth, the realization of unity with God, the establishing of a foundation of faith. The pattern is always the same: believe and receive. If we do not receive the blessings we have asked for, we have failed in one of three ways. We do not have a mental equivalent of the thing we are requesting. 2, the desire is not spiritually legal, that is, it is harmful to someone else. Or 3, our ego is in the way. When we comply with the three conditions, we become such as hear the word and receive it, and we may expect our prayer to bring forth fruit, some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100. When we practice the presence of God, we bring our total life under control and direction of divine wisdom. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. Problems are solved. Harmony is restored. Desires are fulfilled. Obstacles are removed. Conditions are changed. Sickness disappears. All of our affairs are brought into adjustments with divine law. When we practice the presence of God, we are controlled by a power that knows only good, works only for good, and attracts only good. We are governed by an intelligence that sees all things and does all things wisely. We are illumined by a light that penetrates darkness of every kind and form. We are dominated by a will that brings freedom, happiness, and joy. We are animated by a love that brings harmony, healing, and peace. Are you undecided as to which you should do? Are you uncertain as to which way you should go? Then take your problem into the presence and ask Christ to tell you. Do not worry, strain, or fret about it. God knows which way you should go, and he will lead you. Place the whole matter lovingly in his hands, and let him open the way to you. But how shall I know that it is the right decision, you ask? Suppose that I make a mistake, you say, and I answer, when God is in charge of your life, and you listen to him, you can depend upon the decisions which you make. Personal vision is limited. We see at best only a small part of the whole. Intelligence has no limitation of time or space, and is not affected by the appearance of any situation or circumstance. It operates on the law of harmony. Having made a decision with his help, you must at once surrender any responsibility for working it out of him, and know forever afterward that the decision was right and good. Let no outward appearance shake your confidence. Say often to the presence within, I know that you are solving my problem now, and I am grateful. Are you distressed because you have lost something? Stop looking. Take the matter to God and ask Him to find it for you. The Scriptures tell us that there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed. The thing to do is to affirm confidently, nothing is lost in divine mind. To surrender the missing article into God's hand and to forget it. It will be found if you are faithful and accept this help, nothing doubting. But our difficulties and problems indicate our need for a greater consciousness of God's presence. Many times the problems that harass and trouble us most can be met by a simple adjustment in consciousness. Instead of praying for deliverance from a particular difficulty, we should ask that the condition that is causing the discord be revealed to us in order that we may take the action that will correct it. That is what the prodigal son did when he came to himself. By redirecting his thoughts and facing his situation, he returned to his father's house. He was restored to the consciousness of wholeness, and all his needs were supplied. When you take a difficult situation to God in the right spirit, one of two things happens. It is changed, or you find that you have the power and understanding to overcome it. Are there closed doors in your life? God can open them for you. Are you lost, confused, frustrated, and fearful? Remember that God knows the way. There is a light within you that is greater than all the darkness in the world. That light can bring you back into the path of freedom and peace. Do you face illness in yourself or in a loved one? The Son of Righteousness shall arise with healing in his wings. Few people today have an absolute conscience of truth. Until the time arrives when that is established, we should use all means of his healing at our command. If one could meet sickness through his faith and understanding, he grows in the process and becomes stronger than before. But if such factors as the race thought, the emotional climate of the immediate environment, and the evidence of the physical senses overwhelm him, he should recognize that the skill of the physician is also a form of expression of intelligence and a means of healing, and avail himself of it. God is the source of medical science as well as spiritual science. Many good doctors recognize this relationship and advise patients to send for their spiritual directors when they send for their doctors. When we go to pieces and become panicky and fearful in the illness of the loved one, we hinder him instead of helping him. What he needs at such a time is the healing power of our constructive and loving thought. Instead of sending negative and destructive thoughts to tear him down, we must send positive and constructive thoughts to build him up. We must place him in the current of divine power by taking him into the presence of God and leaving him there. We must see him as a whole, strong and well. We must look through the evidence of the physical senses to the spiritual perfection within. There may be dark, fearful, and anxious moments, but every time we allow ourselves to worry, we take the patient out of God's presence. Desire for the speedy healing of a loved one must be matched with an even greater willingness to leave him in God's hands and under the operation of his will. Only under these conditions can the healing power be set in motion. If we are troubled by the thought that God may want to take our loved one home, we must remind ourselves that God takes nothing from us but ills and illusions. The only way to keep our loved ones safe and secure is to daily hold them in presence. Be perfectly natural in your approach to God. Ask him for what you want, and then thank him for the fulfillment of your desire. This will not only help to bring your loved one under the healing force of divine mind and the operation of the divine will, but will deepen your faith in God's loving and protective care. Do you have obligations to meet and see no other way of meeting them? Then face the situation in calmness and faith. Know that you are drawing upon the kingdom of unlimited good, and that this kingdom is here now, closer to you than the breath of your own body. Place your need under the direction of divine wisdom, and know that God will meet it promptly and completely. Sing with the psalmist, "Heaven and earth are full of thee." There is plenty and to spare of everything. It is your Father's good pleasure to have you share his abundance. Are you lonely? Do you find yourself overcome with a sense of separation, even in a crowd? Do you feel a lack of congenial companionship? Jesus was never alone, and neither are you. You can develop the consciousness of the living presence within you as he did. Then no longer will you think and speak of God and man. Your concept will be man in God, God over all, in all, through all, under all, an indivisible God, whole in you and in every man, a God everywhere, equally present at all times. The technique of practice. There are 5 steps which will help you in developing the habit of practicing the presence. 1. Consciously work to form the concept of the indwelling God. 2. Form a partnership with his presence. 3. Recognize the unity of the spiritual and the physical. 4. Develop a dogged persistence in bringing your understanding into experience. 5. Eliminate the self by increasingly thinking of God. 1. Consciously work to form the concept of the indwelling God. The first step in practicing the presence of God is to form in your consciousness the idea that Christ is with you as a living, inherent, inseparable power. Draw deeply upon your feeling and imagination until your awareness of His presence becomes sure and strong. Be alert for instances in which the law of harmony, His law, is operating. Did you awake refreshed and ready for the day? Was your first hour one of anticipation and expectancy? Did you experience joy as you met with or worked with others through the day? Were meetings opportune? Did time lend itself to your needs and plans? Were you successful in what you did? Were you conscious of the presence in others even for a moment? Did you catch a glimpse of the plan, a pattern of which you are a part? Learn to look for evidence of the great God power within small things as well as great. Miracles do happen. Specific prayers are answered. But is there any greater happiness than that of harmonious living? Here is where you look for Him. The power is constantly operating. Train yourself to be conscious of His presence in moments of joy and ecstasy, in the meeting of minds, in shared laughter and triumph, and in victory, in your appreciation of the beautiful in music, art, and literature. See Him in times of distress, grief, discord, and tribulation. Find Him in the mountains, the clouds, the breeze, the earth, its bounties. Recognize Him in the office, the store, the street, the classroom, the courtroom, in the home stricken by sorrow, in the sick room, at the mortuary. Express gratitude for your every recognition of His part in your day. Take time for an unspoken thank you, not only for an action, but for the increasing ability to recognize the presence and to identify yourself with it. 2. Form a partnership with God. The housewife performing the many duties of the home, the salesman calling on his customers, the workman at his bench, the businessman in a store, the clerk behind the counter, the driver of the car, each has a silent partner. His hand is at the wheel. He walks beside us down the street. He rides with us on the bus. No matter where we are or what we are doing, He's always with us. Converse with Him as you would a friend. Tell Him about your problems, worries, and difficulties, and tell Him that you need His help. Place your adversities and cares in His hands. Accept the fact that He is working your problems out for you at the moment. When you run into a dead-end street, put the problem squarely up to Him and realize that He will show you a way you have not yet seen. Know that the power you release has no limitation. The Christ presence is light and life to everything it touches. Fulfill your obligation as a partner. Keep your conscious mind open and free from prejudice, jealousy, animosity. Recognize yourself as an instrument, a tool, a voice, a channel through which good is expressing. Realize, too, that the privilege you have as a partner are shared by everyone else. Salute the spiritual man and everyone you meet. Recognize the vastness of the existing partnership as it operates in the one mind and under the one law, freed from the limitation of time and space. 3. Recognize the unity of the spiritual and the physical. We tend to divide the world into two parts, the material and the spiritual. The belief in this partition must be broken down. There are only two factors to consider, the Creator and the created. To practice the present successfully, we must see the universe as a whole. What can be the purpose of man, the created, except to embody and express his Creator? Glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's, directed St. Paul. Contemplate for one moment the perfection of man's physical being, the intricate system of circulation and digestion, the selectiveness of the senses, the pattern of the bones, muscles, sinews, the beauty and symmetry of the body. Stop long enough to review the order of the world we live in, its movement, its place in the solar system, its minerals, vegetation, and animal life. Then you may get a momentary glimpse of the vision of the Creator. Think, too, of man's great gifts and his ability to think, to communicate through speech with others, to plan, to act individually and in cooperation, to make increasing use of forces of nature and to be aware of himself and his purpose. A divided universe? No. A divided man? Again, no. But a unified world and a whole man made possible by the presence. 4. Develop a dogged persistence in bringing your understanding into experience. The world is full of people who have climbed great heights in spite of many obstacles and opposition in their path. They have determined to go on in the face of disaster and disappointment, and their desires have been fulfilled. We can understand the result because the more we practice the presence, the greater our power becomes. Success in spiritual work is a matter of persevering until victory and triumph have been achieved. When we are determined to succeed, the power responds quickly and powerfully to our desire. Recall stories of people who have lost everything and won it all back again simply because they would not admit failure and loss. They proved to themselves that one with God is a majority, and that the presence is always there waiting to be called forth. There are outstanding illustrations of the fact that man-power plus God-power is greater than any physical handicap, imperfection, disease, limitation, or weakness. Many persons who were given up by the doctors to die have refused to accept that dictum and have outlived their doctors. Success is a matter of making up our minds and holding on through thick or thin. When the wholeness of man is recognized, it can be realized. When mind is called into action, the impossible becomes possible. Are you in the grip of some destructive habit of abnormal appetite that is sapping your strength and ruining your health? Surrender it to the presence and bring all the power of your being into action against it. Know that the presence is stronger and more powerful than any perverse and abnormal appetite, and that he is producing the freedom which you desire. When habits are persistent, only greater persistence will overcome them. God takes full charge of the problem when it is fully placed in his hands. Many people have difficulty in surrendering a habit such as alcoholism because the physical desire for liquor is stronger than the spiritual desire for freedom. These persons have only partially made up their minds and will get only partial results. This should not discourage them, however. The steady dropping of water on a rock will gradually wear it away. The affirmative factor in breaking habits is not the number of failures, but the persistence of the trend of thought. If we keep moving toward the perfect, any bondage will finally be broken. 5. Eliminate the self by increasingly thinking of God. We must eliminate the little self so that the greater self can be born. The natural man, the little self, receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them. Someone has wisely said, anything of myself is too much. Talent stripped of self becomes genius. Courage stripped of self becomes heroism. Ability stripped of self becomes greatness. Humanity stripped of self becomes divinity. The crying need of our age is not more gadgets, airplanes, and automobiles, but the use of more time for Christ. That is why this fifth step in our technique is so important. Jesus' disciples spent 24 hours a day with him for a period of 3 years. Is it any wonder that we have so little power to use and understand things spiritual when we give so little time to the Spirit? The need cannot be met by setting aside a few moments a day for prayer, reading, and meditation. The solution lies in developing a 24-hour awareness of his presence. Practicing the presence is not a new project in spiritual endeavor. It has been known and practiced by the saints and spiritual giants of all ages. The stigmaticists dwell upon the wounds of Jesus' body until they produce a subcutaneous hemorrhage in their own hands and feet. The metaphysical student meditates upon the Christ presence until it becomes real in his life. There are many ways to meditate. Each person must find the way that is most helpful to him. One way of meditation is to concentrate upon such attributes of God as life, truth, love, justice, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, power, peace, beauty, order, and to accept these qualities as our own. Visualizing them in action in our lives helps us to put them into practice. As we put them into practice, we are truly practicing the presence. The 23rd and the 91st Psalms are favorites of many, both as a means to achieve stillness and quiet as the content of meditation. If words interest you, concentration upon the meaning of a specific word is helpful in setting up a train of thought that will lead to meditation. Take, for example, the word establish. How have you heard it used? People say that it is an established firm. He established a home in San Francisco. He established a name for himself by his work. What does that word mean? Stable is a part of it. What does stable mean? Perhaps these words will come to your mind: solid, enduring, fixed, permanent, steadfast, proved, accepted, settled, fixed, grounded. How is the word used in the Bible? The concordance will lead you to such verses as, "And God said unto Noah, This is the token of the covenant, which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. But the Lord is faithful, who shall establish you and keep you from evil. It is a good thing that the heart be established with grace. Be established in the present truth. Believe in God, so shall ye be established." Then connect the word with your desire. Form your own declaration, weighing each word and live in it. My health, supply, friendship, success is even now established in God. St. John said, "No man hath seen God at any time. They that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth." This is the concept that we desire to build. There are many, however, who feel that concrete reminders of his presence are helpful. Many persons like to have statues or pictures of Jesus in their rooms or meditation chambers so that they will be reminded of the one who completely and wholly identified himself with God. Others carry small, colored pictures of Jesus in their pockets or pocketbooks so that they are reminded of their privilege of practicing the presence every time they use him. In some homes, there is a special chair for him in the bedroom. Visualizing seems to make it easier for some people to talk with him about the activities, difficulties, and problems of the day, to pour out the heart to him, to ask him questions about the things that are troublesome, and to listen in the silence of the still small voice. Some families keep a special chair at the table to remind members of the unseen guest during mealtime. A red-letter Bible in which the words spoken by Jesus and printed in ruby may provide a stimulus to your realizations of the presence. Pause after each sentence to ponder its meaning. Give the feeling that he is actually there speaking his words through you. What are we really doing in this step is forming a new habit. The results may be slow at first, but thinking of God soon becomes automatic. In fact, we can come to the place eventually where we think God into the whole day. We can bring him into every situation and condition in our lives by talking to him about people we pass on the street, saying swift prayers for them as they look at us, holding such a thought for them such as, God lives in you as now manifesting his perfect being. By thinking of him as being in every group in which we happen to be, by calling his name when we go to answer the telephone with the thought, one of God's children now wishes to speak to me. Start this practice today, and a wonderful new sense of power and exhilaration will develop within you. Whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God. Share your joy with him. When you find yourself in an intolerable situation, think of God and he will be there by your side. Talk to him about your work. Ask of help on each difficult assignment and you will do a better job. When you have a letter to write, dedicate your hand and mind to God. Ask for wisdom to flow through you and you will write a much better letter. Pray for your customers while you are waiting on him. Bring God into your sales activity, bookkeeping, teaching, welding, carpenter, plumbing, typing, washing dishes, cleaning your house, doing the laundry, and you will always do the job better and with less strain. If you as a student are fearful about an examination, ask God to give you a clear mind and a retentive memory. Ask him to help you to know that he is intelligence, wisdom, and knowledge, and that you are one with him. Pray before you go into a football or basketball game. What you ask for yourself, ask for every other member of the team. Not that you may win the game, but you may play clean and fair and make full use of your power. If you happen to be in a hospital, pray for all those who are waiting on you, doctors, nurses, interns, orderlies. See them as perfect instruments in his service. Pray for health and wholeness to be realized by all the other patients in the hospital, even as you pray for yourself. If you have difficulty in sleeping, tell him about it and ask him to meet this need for you. Recall the promise, he giveth his beloved sleep. Then as you lie down on your pillow, feel his fingers gently touching your eyelids, sealing them in a deep and restful sleep. Feel his presence slowing down and dissolving all the tensions in your body. When you turn off your light, know that he that keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. If you are having trouble in solving a particular difficult problem, go into the silence before you go to sleep and say over and over again to yourself, I contact within me the Christ presence of wisdom, power, and guidance. Say this and feel the truth of the statement until you are convinced that the contact has been made. Then talk to the presence about your problem and tell him of your desire in connection with it. Try to realize that he is at that moment solving the problem for you. Know forever afterward that you have turned it over to a greater power than your own. Say each time the problem returns to your thought, Father, I thank thee that thou art solving this problem for me now. If fear creeps into the picture, meet it with such statement as these. God's activity for me is instant, complete, and sustained. Or the Christ presence in me is an irresistible power, creating my good for me instantly. Prayer for the presence. God, I recognize your presence in me, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. I know that you are the reality and truth of me. With all my heart, I desire to express only this reality and this truth. I know that you are equally present in others, and I ask help to see through the unreality of appearance to the Christ within each man. I am grateful for the good which I have been able to accept. I pray that I may daily grow in power to accept and demonstrate more and more good. I accept the privilege of your companionship with joy and thanksgiving. I consciously clear every avenue of impression so that I may become increasingly aware of your presence. I open wide all the channels of expression in order that you may speak and act through me. I approach the coming night and the new day confidently, for I know that your presence will sustain me, guide me, bless me. I know that I am where I am now because I am in my right place. I know that there is no problem to meet, no joy to experience, no grief to bear, no success to faith, which I will be alone.